So what we're going to take care of now is something that you've done before that we need to do again, which is to create a new controller for our messages. And inside the controllers folder, we'll create a new class and we'll call it messages controller. And press return. And once again, we're just going to implement the base API controller or derived from this. And we want this to be authenticated, so we're going to add the authorize attribute to the top here. And what we'll do is we'll give this a constructor, and we're going to need access to our user repository here. So we'll add the iUser repository and call it user repository, and we'll also need our message repository as well. So we'll say iMessage repository, and we'll call it message repository. And let's go ahead and bring in API interfaces, and we'll just initialize the fields from parameter as well. Nothing new in this case. And what we'll start with, we'll create an HTTP post, and we're going to use this to create a message. So what we'll do is we'll say public async task of action results. And do we need to return anything from this? Well, yes, we should return our message DTO. So let's add the message DTO as what we're returning from this, and we'll say create message, and we'll use our create message DTO, and we'll call it create message DTO. And let's bring in everything we need for this method. We need using API DTOs, and we're going to need system threading tasks, and we'll also need ASPNET Core MVC. And are we happy? Yes, we're happy. Now we can continue. Okay, so what do we want to do first? Well, first of all, let's go and get our username. So we'll say var username equals user, and we'll say get username. And what we'll do first of all, we'll just bring in API extensions. And what we'll do first of all is we'll add a check. We'll check to see if our username is equal to the recipient name in the create message DTO. So we'll check this and we'll say var username equals, and we'll say create message DTO dot recipient name, and we'll say to lower. And if they are equal, then we're going to return a bad request and just say you cannot send messages to yourself. Something else we're just not going to allow in this application. And what we're going to need to do here is get hold of both of our users in the sender and the recipient, as we need to populate the message first of all when we create it, and also going the other way we need to return a DTO from this as well. So what we'll do is we'll say var sender equals await, and we'll say user repository, and we'll say get user by username async, and we'll pass in the username. That's for our sender. And we'll also say var recipient equals await, and we'll say user repository and get user by username async, and in this case we'll get it from the create message DTO and recipient username. And if we don't have the recipients, we'll need to check this, and we'll see if it's null. And if it's null, then we're going to return not found, because we could not find the user. And let's keep going down. So if we get to this stage, then we know we're ready to create a new message. So we'll say var message equals new message, and we'll bring in API entities. And what we want to do here is say the sender is equal to sender, the recipient is equal to recipient, got an extra comma there, and the sender username is equal to the sender.username, and the recipient username is equal to the recipient.username, and the content is equal to the create message DTO.content, and add the semicolon. And then we can go across to our message repository and we can say add message and then pass in this message. And what we want to return from this is a message DTO. So we'll also need to bring in IMapper into what we're doing here. So I'm just going to come over up the top and going to say IMapper and mapper, and we'll need to bring in automapper for this, and we'll initialize the field from parameter, and I'll just bring this down so it's visible. And what we'll do, we'll come back down below the method to add the message, and then what we'll do, we'll say if await, and we'll say message repository, and save all async, and we'll return OK from this. What we should do is return a created at root. We did look at this earlier, but to keep things moving, and we don't have a root where we can get an individual message just now, to keep things moving, we're just going to return the message DTO from here. So what we'll do is we'll say message DTO, and we'll map from our message that we created. And if we don't manage to save it, then we're going to return a bad request and say failed to send message. So that's the logic we need for our creation of a message, saving it to the database, and returning the message DTO to the user. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and test that this is functional. So what we'll do now is we'll go ahead and test this, but we need to start our API once again before we can do so. So I'm just going to run .NET watch run. And I didn't do this after we added the migration, but we're good. Everything looks good inside here. So what we'll do, we'll head across to Postman, and inside section 15, we've got our requests to test our messaging functionality. So first of all, I'm just going to log in as Lisa and save the token to the environment, just a normal thing, username and password. I'll click send, and we should get our token back. Great. And then we've got a post request to create a message from Lisa to Todd. And in the body of this request, we've got the recipient username set to Todd, and then the content. That's all we need to send up when we're creating a message. Most of the work actually gets done on the API for this. So what we should find, if we click send, then we get a 200 OK, and we've got all of the information inside our DTO. And we've got the user photos that look correct, we've got the recipient IDs, the username, and we've got the date read as null, which is fine because we haven't implemented that functionality, and that's what we would expect. So I've got another request here to log in as Todd, and in this case what we're doing is we're going to log in as Todd with the password, and if we take a look at the tests in this case, then what we're going to do is actually set the token to Todd_token, so that when Todd logs in, he's going to have a different token to Lisa, or at least in Postman anyway. And I'll click on send, and we get success. And then we've got a create message from Todd to Lisa, and if I click in the body, then we can see the recipient name is Lisa, and this is a test message from Todd to Lisa. So I'll click on send, and we get success, and everything looks good inside here. So let's go back and just create another message from Lisa to Todd as well, just so that we've got something to work with when we start displaying the messages. And I'll click send, and then we get the message with the ID of 3, everything's fine. So what we'll take a look at next is how we can get the messages from the repo.